Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! INDY! A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up, got it! Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
I mean, that's a goddamn Emmy winner right there.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hey, everybody. Welcome aboard. Appreciate you being with us. Jim Coyle with you, as always, coming to you from high atop the 18th fairway here at the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios on this great Monday. Post-sports weekend celebration. Lots going on. Of course, Indiana Sports Beat Radio powered by Andy Moore Honda. Make sure you go to andymorehonda.com to get more to your door and the best in new and used vehicles. No place better than to find your next ride to get to the IU games or wherever you're going. Also, Wow Food Group and the Wealth family of restaurants in and around the Bloomington area. Great places like Southern Stone, located in Patterson and Rogers. Best tenderloin I have ever had. Indiana likes to brag about the tenderloins. Without, hands down, this is the best I have ever had. Incredible. I don't need to tell you, there is a lot to get to today on the program. John Boy, besides Don Fischer, I know we got Dustin Dopirak.
That is right. We'll also hear from Tom Allen a little bit.
Hear from Tom Allen, and there is a ton to talk about, of course, as the Big Ten got underway. Not underway, but week two, most teams, I believe, I do not think that there was a single conference game where so everyone was playing out of conference. Indiana, of course, Indiana hosting Indiana State and doing what they absolutely needed to do, coming away with a convincing 41-7 win. 21 of those points coming in the first quarter. They just bum rushed the Sycamores. And, of course, Taven Jackson got the start, and Brendan Sorsby got to come in relief. There's no doubt that Taven Jackson looked tremendous. But I don't know that Indiana has a quarterback that's better than the other. I honestly don't, because there's no way you can compare starting against Ohio State and starting against Indiana State. Completely different starts, and the play calling was quite different. So I just didn't see it as a fair comparison, but you can't complain about anything that either did. There's no way they're not going to start Taven Jackson against Louisville. I'll tell you that. Taven was expected to be the guy. Indiana kind of pushed him. They needed him to be the guy for all the reasons people comment saying, well, there's no way he's not going to start. He transferred from Tennessee, by gosh. Well, I don't care where he transferred from, but there is substance to that. There is. And that there was a lot of pressure on the staff for him to be the guy, but they couldn't just make it so. But I certainly think he got an easier path without question. I mean, if you give Brendan Sorsby the start, you reverse it and give Brendan Sorsby the start. Your first starts against Ohio State. Bam, really? Okay, well, we'll reverse that and see how that works out. But I'm not complaining about anything. I think, again, they looked spectacular. The play calling was immensely better. The offensive coordinator, of course, Walt Bell, lot different calls, doing so many things different that they didn't do that was complained about, that I complained about last week. Hitting running backs out in the flats, rolling the quarterback out, getting Jalen Lucas the ball out in space. He touched the ball two times, and had two 25-yard touchdowns off tackle, kind of between a gap, a completely different. They did not run him between the tackles at all that I recall. You can't do that. You have to do what you did. If you get that seam, which he got between the tackle and the end, and he has good patience. Watched him run. I've watched the game over. He'll give a little stutter step and boom, and then he's gone. And if you don't have the right angle, I'm telling you, it's good night, Irene. Now, there were some dumbass penalties. 7 penalties Indiana had. Where is my stats? Or my stats right here. 6 of them were on special teams. What are the penalties? There we go. 7 penalties for 60 yards. But the 2 running into the kickers, I don't know that they're not even on here, or I don't think. Because I think they were declined, both of them, because it wouldn't have helped them. If that is the case, that would have made 9 penalties and a lot more yardage. But the special teams made all the penalties except for 1, which that's actually a great sign for the rest of the group that they had 1 penalty. And I've got to be honest with you, I thought that was a BS call. It was not only was it a BS call, it cost Indiana a touchdown. They called, I think it was the center, for being downfield on a pass, on a run pass option. But then he was like 5 yards, I think, up. And that pass was on the money from Taven Jackson. I forget who that was to. But he scored. They ruled him down at the 1, but I guarantee if they had to go back and look at that replay, I think he scores, because I think he bounced off of and over the defender. But lots to get to. Don Fischer will be joining us. We'll talk about that. Mel Tucker, I'm sure you've seen, is in a little hot water up at Michigan State. Michigan State having, and more issues as always. And if we could play a walk-up, you know what D'Antonio's walk-up music would be? Mark D'Antonio is coming back in some kind of role. John Boy, his walk-up music would be, look who's back.
Skating a little Eminem.
Look who's back. Look who's back. Look who's back. Look who's back. Da-na-na-na.
I just think he's a shady dude. And Michigan State's having enough shady issues. They have had so many problems from Larry Nazar, and all kinds of other stuff. Now I'm not putting a guilty charge on Mel Tucker, because I think there's a lot of stuff that may have gone on. Not that it was a smart thing, but I think, again, we're talking about a phone call here. I'm not a fan of D'Antonio at all. I just think he's dirty. I remember they had a player that had seven serious traffic infractions in like a short period of time, and got another one like the week before the Indiana game. And you know what his suspension was? He sat out 1 play. Not a fan. Dirty D'Antonio. But if Michigan State can get out of the Mel Tucker mess, this is a godsend to Michigan State if it works out for them. And I mean, I hate to say it like this, but this would be gigantically financially great for Michigan State because they are morons. And after he had an 11-2 2021 season, the season after COVID and things were still COVID wonky, they give him a damn 10-year extension and $95 million. Who the hell does that? One season, $9.5 million per year, $77 million left on that contract at the moment. That's how much money is at stake for the Spartans. And guess where he came from? Do you recall? He had spent one season as the head coach at Colorado.
Speaking of which, you're firmly on that bandwagon, and they once again showed that they might be the real deal, taking down Nebraska fairly handily.
Thank you, DraftKings. Did
you make some money from the Cornhuskers this weekend? From the Buffaloes?
Hell yes. I'm not a big bettor at all. But sometimes if I see things and I'm like, those games, you're like, oh, I can't miss this. There was no way. I don't care what anybody said that Colorado was going to win by 3 points in that game. And as expected, they did. But I will say this. You better watch out for Nebraska because they are getting better. They made their quarterback freaking killed them. Oh my God. I think they had 3 turnovers in the first half.
Yeah, Mr. Jeff Sims.
He fumbled the ball twice, and instead of just dropping on the ball, tries to pick it up. You learn that's a cardinal rule when you play football. Don't try to pick up the ball, just fall on it. Didn't do it twice. Twice they limited to turnovers. The other time was because the ball was snapped into a motion guy. So the offense is out of sync. Now, he did go for like a 57-yard touchdown on a quarterback run. And I don't know. It's hard to get a gauge on them offensively. They like to run the ball, and when that's not the case, they're forced to throw it. But their defense, no joke. Luckily for Indiana, they don't go there.
That's
yes,
right.
Sir?
They don't play them at all this year. One more thing on Colorado, though. This week they play Colorado State. Currently, they're 23.5-point favorites. You going to bet on that game?
Nope. Where are they playing?
They're playing at home. By the way, speaking of spreads, I got to brag on myself a little bit. I dead on predicted the opening line for the Indiana-Louisville game at 9.5.
What'd you say?
Cardinals.
What?
Are you surprised that it's not closer, or do you think it should be further away from even?
Ooh.
If I was a betting person, I wouldn't really bet on Indiana if I was, but I'd take Indiana to cover.
I agree with you right now. That surprises me. We'll talk about that in a little while. But yeah, that surprises me. Louisville's good. Don't get me wrong. And I've talked about their offense. Jeff Brom, you got a veteran quarterback and lots of pieces. They use the running backs out in space. Indiana has the same thing without the veteran quarterback. They've got a lot of great pieces, but the problem is, and it was what I've talked about previously, and I said Sorsby is the guy, yada yada. Again, at this point, I don't know that they're. You still can't tell. There's no way you can separate them, but off of these two, unfortunately. But we'll come back, talk plenty more. Don Fischer on the program today, Dustin Dopirak as well. We're back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market. Yeah, how do you get in? I failed to mention the woman that Mel Tucker is involved, that this is take on. She is a anti-rape activist working with the team.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's some weird and wacky stuff, man.
Wild and wacky stuff.
That's right. Some wild and wacky stuff.
Oh, man.
That's what we need to see. That's stuff that.
Good morning, Don.
Morning.
The boss is in the house.
The boss.
Well, last week had to be a lot more fun.
Yeah, it was. It was a really good performance by Indiana. Don't want to get too excited just yet, but
no,
it was fun to watch. And if you don't enjoy 41-7 wins, then you have no clue what you're doing as an Indiana football fan.
Yep. Or a fan of any sport, period.
Yeah.
I enjoyed watching everything else. I mean, I enjoyed watching, and we'll get back into that, but Walt finally doing what he should have did last week, exactly what I thought about. He didn't put them in any strenuous situations, roll them out, throw some passes, get them guys out in the flats, hitting the running backs. I'm like, okay, where was that last week? Because you might have had a shot.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But, we can all criticize, because one of the things that you talk about against going up against a team like Ohio State in your first game with two redshirt freshman quarterbacks is, well, what do we do to make sure we just don't get annihilated here?
Yeah.
And I feel for their thinking process. I understand it. At the same time, when you get to a point, you're 10-3 at halftime, you got to say, hey, we're playing well enough. Maybe we got a shot. And that's
you got to believe. You got to believe in yourself.
Right. And I think that's when you kind of unload and start throwing some stuff out there that you feel like you could succeed with. And it's hard to do that when you're looking at redshirt freshmen. That's the big deal.
Here we go, guys.
Golf Club at Eagle Point in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by the Chop Shop, home of the Indiana football and men's basketball coaches shows. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, everybody. Jim Coyle with you, coming to you from high atop the 18th fairway here at the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, brought to you by Chop Shop, where this Wednesday you can find Don Fischer hosting Inside Indiana Football with head coach Tom Allen. Chop Shop, of course, great place to get a meal on the steakhouse side, or you can walk over and pick out your own steak, have them prepared for you. Don Fischer, the golden voice of the Hoosiers, here with us, and I'm sure he had a lot more fun this past weekend calling the game. And you were a lot busy. You had to have some lozenges with you on all those touchdown calls.
It was a fun night, no question about it. I don't like football on Friday night at the college level. I'd rather see high school football. But that said, we saw Indiana perform, I think, in just exactly the way we anticipated or hoped that they would. They dominated Indiana State from the very beginning of the contest. The second quarter, Tom was not happy with the defense, and it kind of had a lull there with the offense as well. But without question, it was a dominant performance. You put up 558 yards against anybody, you got to feel really good about what you saw. And the defense gives up only 93 in the ball game, only 10 yards given up in the second half. That's just a dominant performance, and you've got to feel really good about it from an Indiana perspective.
Yeah, those numbers, and I know that Indiana State they're not the same talent-wise, and they were hurting at quarterback, but still, it's a college level. I mean, this is not an FCS team. But just the play calling was fun. It was very encouraging to see the play calling because it was a variety and everything that we didn't see the week before, with quarterback being rolled out in the pocket, hitting guys in pattern, hitting running backs out in space early, getting the ball to Jalen Lucas outside of the tackle, and look what the hell he did. 2 touches and 50 yards and 2 touchdowns. That was magical and shows what he could do out in space. But they got the ball to Josh Henderson through the air and on the ground. So they really, really mixed it up, Don.
They did. It was a much different performance from an offense that we saw very conservative the week before. We've talked about this a lot in that you got 2 redshirt freshmen getting their first opportunity last week, the week before, I should say, and they just didn't get a chance to do very much. And what we saw on Saturday, I thought both quarterbacks looked good, but Taven Jackson really did a terrific job in his performance out there. I think most of us believe that he's probably going to be the guy that won the quarterback position, will get the start against Louisville. We'll see, but because there's still no announcement to that scenario, because Tom Allen wouldn't say after the ball game who it would be. They said they were going to go back and evaluate the film and take a look and make a decision. So we'll find out if they've looked at it up to this point, because we'll have a press conference later today to find that out. If in fact he's made a decision, I think he's made the decision. Whether he reveals it or not will be the question.
I think I agree with you. I think there's absolutely no doubt. Both quarterbacks played well. Brendan Sorsby comes in when Taven got hurt for a play, and they don't have him just hand the ball off. He drops straight back and throws what was like a 15, 17-yard strike, and then goes right back out. I agree. Taven's going to end up getting the start because of his performance. I don't know that it's quite fair, because Brendan had to start against Ohio State and go against that.
Right.
So I don't know that Indiana really has a difference between these 2 quarterbacks. I honestly am starting to think that one is not better than the other, but they have to choose one regardless. You can't have 2 guys going in and out. I mean, you can, but it's just best. You've got to get into the rhythm of the game. And I wish they would have done it before game 1 going into this game next, because Louisville coming up is a very, very important, and it's going to be a very tough challenge.
Well, there's no question Louisville has really looked good in their first 2 contests. They beat a good Georgia Tech team, I think 39-34. And then they just blew away Murray State 56-0 last week. They looked impressive. Jack Plummer, who was 3 years at Purdue under Jeff Brom, and then went to California last year and started out there, and now he's back with Brom again at Louisville. So he's a veteran quarterback. He knows the system that Brom runs, so there's nothing lost there with those 2 guys being back together again. And I think Louisville's talent level, especially offensively, is pretty special based on what we've seen thus far. Great receivers, really good running back. Jordan is terrific from what I understand. And I think this is exactly what I think Indiana needs right now, to find out just where they're at, because Louisville is going to give them a challenge on both sides of the football. And I'm looking forward to seeing what Indiana's defense does in this game. If they can continue their terrific play up to this point, I say terrific. I'm talking about in comparison with years gone by here, the last couple of years prior to this year. They've looked really good at this juncture. They continue to make plays. Philip, what am I spacing here?
Dunham.
Philip Dunham came up with a terrific interception in the end zone against Indiana State to keep them out. And the defense threw a shutout. And Jalen Lucas's fumble recovery for a touchdown, run back by the Bloomington South kid, Blackwell, was a terrific play for them. Not a good one for Jalen, but the good news is the defense, the second half, gave up just 10 yards. So there's so much I want to see in this next ball game. I'm looking forward to this game more than any thus far out of their 3 ball games of the season, just because I think it's going to give Indiana a much truer evaluation of where this team is at.
Yeah, the advantage Louisville has, as you mentioned, Plummer, he threw for over 3,000 yards and like 26 touchdowns at Cal last year. That experience that he has and the familiarity with the offense, and they've been able to just continue working on that for the first, all fall and throughout these 2 games. So they're ahead in that regard. Indiana is just a little bit behind, but hopefully they can continue what they showed yesterday. And Indiana's defense is going to have to step up. There has been some concern with the secondary. They looked pretty good against Ohio State in the first game. Ohio State a little shaky. They're definitely going to get tested against Louisville, and that is going to be the difference for me in that game, is whether or not Indiana's secondary can step up and maintain things. And in addition to getting to the quarterback, you don't have to sack him, but you got to pressure him.
Right. I think that's the key. We still haven't seen as much pressure on the quarterbacks at this point as I would like to see. I don't know if Indiana has shown as much at this juncture of what they're capable of doing with some blitzes and those kinds of things. Right now, I would say there are question marks on Indiana's football team in a lot of respects. Certainly from an offensive standpoint, you're going to go up against a defense that's pretty doggone good, even though they did, I guess Louisville gave up 34 points to Georgia Tech in that opener. So that may say that the Louisville defense may not be on the same par as their offense is, but their offense is really good. And there's no question that the Indiana's defense will get another really difficult challenge here. And then can the offense pick up where they left off this past week and build on what they've accomplished in that game against Indiana State? And I don't expect them to get 500 yards in the ball game against Louisville, but I want to see how competitive Indiana can be offensively, because I think the biggest question on this football team is on the offensive side of the ball. And that's where the challenge that Louisville will give Indiana this week may tell us.
Yeah, and this game is so – I keep saying this game's so important because before the season I was not confident that Indiana had what it would take to make a bowl game, to win 6 games this year. If they beat Louisville, that completely changes for me. And I will then think that not only do they, I would expect them to win the 6 games and make a bowl game, because if they do that, they will have really gotten over a big hurdle, and they would have had to show great improvement. And I've watched Illinois. They haven't looked great. Teams that are on Indiana's schedule, that all of a sudden Michigan State, and I'm like, man, there are more wins here now all of a sudden, but it all hinges on this Louisville game.
Very much so. I mean, that's what you feel. I mean, it's a long season. Lots of different things can happen. And one of the things that happened in the Indiana game on Friday night against Indiana State is they had 2 receivers go down, or at least were injured and did not come back into play. E.J. Williams went out fairly early. Cam Camper went out fairly early. But Omar Cooper stepped up, and he was spectacular in his performance. And I've seen this kid in 2 seasons now in fall camps. I've thought, man, this kid really looks good. And last year we didn't see him at all. I mean, I think he may have gotten in a ball game, but he was classified as a redshirt freshman coming into this season. I didn't see him in the first game. He didn't play, I don't think. Maybe got in for 1 play or something like that. And then this past week, he comes in, Cam Camper goes out, and you didn't lose a thing with Omar Cooper in the ball game, which really impressed me. He stepped up and played terrific.
Yeah, Indiana definitely has the pieces on offense. And that's another thing I've been saying. James Evans, a punter, He is such a valuable weapon. This dude has got a cannon in his leg, and he is booming these kicks. Very important for Indiana for field position and things of that nature. He's performed well early on, so that's also a great sign to get these put together. One horrible sign, and I know Casey Teagarden took a ripping from Tom Allen because of the 7 penalties. 6 were on the special teams, 2 of which were just, I'm sorry to say it, idiotic, running into the punter. Now, one of them may have been a little iffy, but there were just a couple of them that just looked like dumb penalties.
Well, and the week before they had several special teams penalties as well. So that's why Casey's having some problems right now with his group, because they had too many penalties in the first ball game. So, yeah, there's no question. The special teams and James Evans, before we go any further with that, James Evans has gotten better. He looked like a fish out of water his freshman year. I mean, he was doing things. He had never kicked in a college football game, never saw a college football game. He's from New Zealand and just came out of that kicking camp in Australia and basically was just learning what college football was all about and looked that way. Last year, he was much better, very steady, did a nice job of placing the ball. This year, he's banging the football. He is knocking it down the field. He is a true weapon. And I've talked about this, and people know that have followed Indiana for very long. When they listen to Don Fischer, he wants to know how good the punter is, because I ask every coach the same thing. And Tom Allen and I have talked about this, and he agreed with me, because Kevin Wilson, and no knock on Kevin Wilson, but Kevin Wilson wouldn't scholarship a player at the punting position. He wanted guys that would walk on and punt for him, and that's what he got, guys that weren't as good. Tom Allen went and got scholarship guys at the punting position, and they've gotten better, and James Evans is proving to be everything we thought he would be when he got here, but obviously he was too young and a little bit too nervous in his first couple of years to do what he's doing now, but we've got him for another year after this one. That's the good news.
Well, not only is he scholarship putters, he's scholarship to the long snapper. And that might be the only school in the country that does that. I mean, it's crazy. He wants the special. That's why he knows how important special teams are, right. And to a team like Indiana, who has a smaller margin for error in games. So you have to be as good as you possibly be on every discipline.
No question. Special teams are a huge part of football, and they don't get the recognition, but take a look at what Jalen Lucas did last year, kept Indiana, or actually helped win a couple of ball games last year with what he could do on special teams. And he continues to be a weapon that people have to prepare for. And without question, he's one of the more dynamic players on this Indiana football team.
Yeah, and I think we saw exactly how they need to use him on those first 2 runs where he scored from 25 yards out. They were nothing but he just had a seam between the tackle and the end, and man, he's got this little move where he hesitates, and if the defender hesitates, it's over. He is gone, and he will get around you in a bat of an eye.
Yeah, he's special. There's no question about it, and I love Josh Henderson as well. I just think that guy plays so hard. He rarely loses a yard. I mean, it's almost never that he go backwards. He always goes forward. He's a terrific between the tackles runner. And Christian Turner gives you a little bit of both Jalen Lucas and Josh Henderson. And Trent Howland, he is a kid that is 6'3" and 240 pounds. I mean, this guy is a load. And if he gets more playing time, and he can catch the ball too. So I think they've got a really good running back room, a great receiving room. And obviously the quarterbacks looked so much better last week. I think it's going to be interesting. I'm just so excited about this game against Louisville, because I wish we were playing it in Bloomington, to be quite honest with you.
Yes.
But nevertheless, it'll be exciting for these players playing in an NFL stadium. I guess that's a big part of it. I don't know what the crowd's going to look like. I've not heard anything about ticket sales for this ball game, but honestly, playing Louisville, the test that Indiana, I think, really needs, and if they can win that ball game, you talk about a confidence level boost that's going to be.
Absolutely. Don, it's up next Wednesday night, hosting Inside Indiana Football with Coach Tom Allen at Chop Shop, of course. Don's had a chance to enjoy what's your favorite meal there?
Well, I've only had 2, so I can't tell you yet.
You work too hard.
I can tell you this. I think their food is terrific. I haven't had anything I haven't liked at this juncture, and I could say the same about Southern Stone. So Mike's got it going there with his restaurants in Bloomington.
Absolutely. Don Fischer, thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Jim. See you.
You bet. The voice of the Hoosiers, Don Fischer, joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by Chop Shop, where you can find Inside Indiana Football each Wednesday night, like we said, but you can also find the best in meats, bakery, seafood that is overnighted, and a steakhouse on the other side. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. By the way, Jim, I haven't mentioned this yet, but I'm credentialed for the game this weekend, so you may see me up at Lucas Oil.
Awesome.
I'm not 100% going yet, but there's a 90% chance I'll be going. I'll confirm with you later this week. Morning, Dustin.
Good morning, John. Where are you going?
The Indiana-Louisville game this weekend.
Nice. Cool. Sorry, Maxine's got a lot of thoughts this morning.
That's right. I mean, the Indiana football that's all the talk.
Exactly. That's she's having a massive conversation
Has to weigh
with every
in.
dog on the street about Indiana. Louisville.
It's funny because the other day somebody asked, hey, where's the guy with the dog been? Which actually,
she's just not been making a lot of noise, but she's got a lot to say this morning.
And the first thing I said, well, I'm sure you mean Dustin, but I mean,
yeah,
there's Dustin Schutte has a dog. Kristen Airy has a dog.
Rick Bozich has a dog.
Rick Bozich, Ruby never makes an appearance.
That's true.
Ruby never makes an appearance.
Yeah,
but it's funny.
Quiet lately, but she's not quiet.
I've never had a year where I knew like all the dogs' names of my guests.
Ours got personalities apparently, but
yes,
Maxine, I don't know what we got this morning. Why there's an emergency? What she's mad about?
We need to get Maxine some special.
Some what?
Sports Beat, Indiana Sports Beat treats.
There we go.
Sports Beat
like
dog
you probably
treats.
need to license those first, right? Or get a distributor or something.
Indiana Sports Beat has gone to the dogs. Oh man, did you watch the sports all weekend, or were you gone?
A lot. We did other things too. So I am one of those affected by this Nexstar DirecTV thing.
Oh,
so
I don't understand why everybody does not have YouTube TV.
You know, DirecTV
it is. I've had it for 5 years.
Really?
Never had a problem ever. It's on my phone. I take it anywhere I go. If I travel, it has every freaking sports channel I would want. I'm like, yeah, they've not had a single beef with anybody. It's never gone down. Doesn't matter if it's raining.
All right,
I'm gonna have to look into this. It's an issue. I mean, like, so the thing is, I mean, like I said, AT&T has been good to me in general. And so like AT&T now has like DirecTV partnership. And so that's what I've been on. And it hasn't been a problem until now. I don't get CBS or Fox. It's a problem.
Catering.com.
Yeah.
That's garnishcatering.com. Garnish Catering is a proud partner of Wow Food Group. This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Monday. Glad to have you with us. Dustin Dopirak joins us now from the Indy Star, along with Maxine.
She's got thoughts this morning.
She's an independent agent.
That she is.
She's on her own. She's not under contract and available if anyone needs extra doggy thoughts. Her contract expired last year and is a free agent. And Dustin has been
to everybody.
shopping her around, man.
She's just talking about all the topics, and she's patrolling the east side of Indianapolis as we go.
She's got it all going down. Anthony Richardson had his opening. I mean, he played okay. He threw that pick. Colts. It's gonna be kind of a rugged year. It looks like.
Yeah, well, I mean that's what you expect. Full disclosure, as we were just talking on the break, I'm on DirecTV and I'm caught up in this Next Star thing, so I didn't actually get to watch the game whole. But because I don't get CBS or Fox up here, it's wonderful. But looking at Richardson's stats, I mean, 24, 37, 223 and a touchdown, 1 interception, was sacked 4 times. That's it, and rushed for 40 yards and a touchdown. I mean, I think generally that's, for debuts, not bad. Was in the ball game until the end. I mean, obviously they had a chance at another touchdown. I think got stopped on 4th and 1 right at the end of the game. You get beat by Trevor Lawrence, who's ahead of you. Lawrence's numbers aren't a ton better, 241 yards, 2 touchdowns, but obviously he's just going to command the game better because, he's had a few years, certainly had a phenomenal college career, was #1 overall pick. You're expecting, kind of that you're going to have the quarterback that's behind there. But I mean, I think you saw some good throws. I say this. You saw the athleticism. Like I said, Maxine's got thoughts this morning. But yeah. So I mean, it's ultimately a good start. But all right. Like if you were picking 4th, you're probably not in great shape. And not only that, you're what was your franchise running back not too long ago is now not playing. Is that now on the PUP list and has a contract issue and dispute. So that's going to put you in a position where sort of any wins you get are going to be difficult to do. So, like it again, not a bad start, and seemed like they did a lot to try to simplify things, keep it easy, get them a rhythm, a bunch of tunnel screens, a bunch of, I think half field reads was the word that Nate Atkins used. So Nate and Nate and Joel, I thought, did a pretty good job of covering things, so I picked up a little bit from those guys. Joel Erickson and Nate Atkins are 2 beat writers at the Star, but seemed like, your standard first game if you're going to start right away as a rookie.
Yep, could have been much worse, no doubt. But we'll see how that unfolds. Indiana also quarterback, still have a quarterback race, sort of. There's no, I think that most of us, or virtually all of us, who watch the game, think that Indiana has their starting quarterback, who I don't know if he'll be announced today or not, but there's no way they're not going to start Taven Jackson against Louisville.
I'd be really surprised, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, that's who they wanted it to be, needed it kind of to be, and he gave them a good enough reason the other night against a way overmatched Ohio State team. But the offense just looked better. I mean, the calls were better. Everything was better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, to your point, though, everything looks a lot better when you're playing a lower division opponent. I mean, just obviously not to crack on Indiana State, but there's a difference in FBS and FCS football. You have way more guys on scholarship on FBS. Just everything. You have all of the advantages. I mean, you should be better because of what you get at the FBS level versus what you get at the FCS level. So that's not being disrespectful, but it is a tough read to go from, all right, you're playing one of the best teams in the country to a team at a lower level. Like, what did you learn? Did everybody actually get better? What is reality, and what is for lack of a better term, smoke and mirrors? I mean, what is just a case of, all right, you're just dealing with a drastic downturn in competition. But I did think Taven looked sharp. Obviously, I think he made a lot of good throws. I thought the best throw he made was the one that got pulled back on the ineligible man downfield, the kind of fade ball.
Absolutely, and that was a bad call. That was a horrible call. The illegal man downfield. When I watched the video, it was like he looked like he was 5 yards down the field, and not blocking anybody. It was I just
it's not a great not a great call, but I mean he was downfield. He was past the line of scrimmage. I'm not sure how far. What's the rule? How far?
I thought you got like 5 yards, or there was like a little buffer that you got.
There's probably a buffer, but I don't know if it's 5 yards. So I don't know. I mean, I have not studied that portion of the rule book that closely.
And I think that play was actually a touchdown. They marked him down at the 1. They had to go back. I'm like, go back and look at that, because I think he hit and rolled over it, and that would have been an incredible play.
Yeah, but, absolutely. I mean, but it was a gorgeous throw, and it was like, okay, he's got that in his bag. You're like, all right, like, and Sorsby's been okay. I mean, I don't think Sorsby played poorly. I think he has ultimately been, relatively sharp, 17 of 32. I mean, there's not too many bad throws in there. Taven's 19 of 26 so far. It's probably been a little bit sharper. Sorsby made, I thought, some good throws against Ohio State. It's not easy to, like, in terms of just fairness of competition, like, would you go out and say, like, okay, Sorby had every single opportunity and lost it? I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but you got to pick somebody. And, Taven was good enough against Indiana State that you can make him that somebody, and you can make that work. And obviously, I think from a, political recruiting standpoint, I think, to your point, you kind of want it to be Taven because you recruited him from Tennessee. So you want to be able to say, hey, if we bring you in from this really big school, you're going to get a chance to start. And so it works on a lot of levels for it to be Taven. He's Trace's, little brother, like all of that stuff, helps the cause. So if Taven's ahead, it's almost like Sorsby has to win it by a little bit, to get it over Taven. But I mean, at some point you got to pick a guy, and it makes sense for him to be the guy. And, now obviously things can go wrong. Taven can hit a rough patch. Sorsby might get another shot at it. He can get hurt. A lot of things can happen. And I think, Sorsby's shown you enough positives that you don't feel bad throwing him in. It's obviously, which means he's come a long way. Because you got to remember a year ago when they threw Sorsby in, I mean, it was rough. And obviously it was only in for a drive, but it was very much okay, this guy is a true freshman and he has not had a chance yet. And, what is he doing here? Because it's like, I don't know why they put him in before Dexter Williams last year, but I mean, he's clearly, just grown into the position, grown into being a guy, being a redshirt freshman, and a guy that you can trust to throw out there if you need to. So that is a generally positive development, I think, for Indiana. I mean, like, I don't know that you look and say, well, these two guys can win me games, or, they can be the reason we win, but they might not be the reason you lose.
Yeah, it will be. Next week is going to be big in a lot of ways. Not only the game itself, how important that it is for Indiana, but it will be telling for not just the quarterback, the offensive line, the defensive secondary. I don't have any qualms with the defensive front and the linebackers. I think they're just solid. If Indiana their secondary can show that they can hang with Louisville, they're going to be in for a really good season and put Indiana in some good positions. And if Indiana can move the ball and score offensively, man, this could turn into a different season than what I expected. Not one where I think they're going to, go to a gigantic bowl, but they could get to a bowl. Beating Louisville is the first step. I've said that many times, because there are some winnable games after that at the bottom rung teams in the Big Ten East, whether it's Michigan State, which we talked about that, Rutgers, Maryland.
Michigan State's in a place.
They never can get out of their own. They can't get out of their own way, it seems like.
I mean, this one is the doozy of all doozies. I mean, that one broke at 12:45, and you're like, am I really reading these words? Like, is this possible? Like, I had a couple of drinks today. I mean, like, I'm not hallucinating this, am I? Like, I'm really Mel Tucker. He did what? He admitted he did what? Like,
yes, he admitted right. I mean, you got to give him that, man.
You don't got to give him anything. You don't got to give Mel Tucker anything. Even if you give him every benefit of the doubt on this, it's bad. Even if you're like, well, still bad. Like, I don't give him the benefit of the doubt on everything. And even if you do give him the benefit of the doubt on everything, it's bad. I mean, I think the wording they used was unprofessional conduct, and it's unprofessional conduct, even if you're saying that Brenda Tracy is denying that it was in fact consensual, and she's lying about it being consensual. Even if you say it was, it's still bad.
Absolutely.
Like he's married. He's bringing this woman in to teach his team about
players. He was an anti-rape activist.
Yeah, it's bad. It's just bad to start with. Like
that just shows you how dumb. I mean, that just shows you how dumb
it's
somebody
remarkable.
is.
It's remarkable. And again, like innocent until proven guilty. They obviously had to adjudicate and go through this. And I've had to cover sexual assault cases before, unfortunately, while covering college football. It's certainly, and when I covered Tennessee, there was someone else, different woman, and I'm blanking on her name, which is really a shame because she was really good to me as far as being a helpful source in talking about through this kind of stuff. Unfortunately, there are several women who are doing this because and I say that to say it's unfortunate that several women have been through something that gives them expertise on it. It's certainly sad that it's been going on this long, has been going on forever. And there are enough people that have had this tragic experience and had tragic experience close to football teams that can speak to it and tell players to do better. But yeah, of all people, you're like, what, are you serious? How can you and again, don't know who did what. There's an innocent till proven guilty aspect of this, but you're just like, whoa, wow, that's bad. And again, even if you're granting him every benefit of the doubt, it's still bad. And I don't grant him every benefit of the doubt, from a personal standpoint. But yeah, so that obviously makes Michigan State more vulnerable, in the much less important piece of the discussion. And so, yeah, if Indiana gets going against Louisville, they've got a shot. There are a few winnable games out there. But I think, Zach Osman wrote this a few times, basically that game one was going to be against too good of an opponent for them to really tell, and game two was against too good of an opponent for them to really tell. And so, like, I'm not at the point where I'm like, well, they got a shot. I mean, like, I still lean to they're going to lose to Louisville and that they're going to be a 4-win team. But it's just like, so you can prove to me otherwise. And Louisville would be the start of that, of showing you have the capacity to beat, a legit team that is on your level, close to your level, maybe better than what is considered your level at this point. Being able to do it, it's not a neutral site because you're closer to, but there are Louisville fans in Indianapolis. So it's it's not in your arena, it's not in your stadium. So,
if you open up as a 10-point dog in Indianapolis,
they're a 10-point dog.
They're a 10-point dog. We're not talking a 3-point game here. That 10 points, Vegas feels very comfortable with Louisville coming in and winning that game. And I get it because the one thing I said, whether I thought it was going to be Sorsby and should have been Sorsby, but it doesn't matter who. It should have been someone before game one, because what they've done is they've cut the snaps of who this is in half. David Jackson will probably start against Louisville, but he got half the snaps he could have gotten in preparing, and he needed it desperately, or whomever needed it desperately.
On the flip side, they've had to change quarterbacks enough times that it's not the worst thing in the world that the other guy got a bunch of snaps. I mean, 6 of one, half dozen the other. I mean, like you can make the argument that, they have, when they've picked a guy, they've ended up having to play another guy who wasn't ready, and so there's a whole bunch of different ways to do this. I mean, you first off, you'd have to presume that if you're playing Indiana State, you're going to play two quarterbacks, in that game. Like, you should get somebody work against Indiana State, and you kind of presume that you're going to give somebody to, snaps against Ohio State because you're going to get beat that bad. I think that's kind of presumed going in. I don't think it's a crazy idea if you're Tom Allen to say, well, I would probably have to play two guys anyway, because I got to presume that, I'm going to lose Ohio State and I'm going to lose it big. And, I should get, reps for my second guy. If I'm going to be in that position anyway, why don't give them both a shot? One. And when it comes to, Indiana State, I should win that game big. So I should be giving a guy, my second teamer snaps anyway. Why not make them snaps when they matter? If I'm already going to be doing it, and so obviously there's something to be said about rhythm and whatnot. But I get, if you really don't feel like you know who your guy is, I don't think you've put yourself behind the 8 ball all that much. It's better to choose a guy. But if you don't know, you don't know. And it's a tough situation. I mean, like, certainly if I was a beat writer, I'd rather have the name just because you can write about it and everything. But, I get the idea. If you really don't feel confident knowing who it is yet, I don't think it sets you back that bad that both of them got snaps the first 2 games. And there's a benefit from that in the long term too.
Yeah, going on the schedule, the Big Ten is not as strong as normally is. Unfortunately, Indiana is still in the Big Ten East for one more year, and the Big Ten East is a juggernaut, to say the least. You've got, of course, Michigan is sitting at number 2, and a Penn State team that is probably being overlooked a little bit. Probably the second best team in the Big Ten. Then, of course, you've got Ohio State, which Indiana has already played. The only team on the other side of the ledger that's ranked is Iowa, which Indiana does not play, but they will play the 3 ranked teams from the top, probably teams that will all be in the top 5 when Indiana plays them. Because I'm going to guess that by the time Indiana plays Penn State, they will, if they have not lost, they'll be up in the top 5. So that will have 3 top 5 games. I mean, damn, that's tough.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, obviously they got to play each other, and I don't have that in front of me right now in terms of who plays when. But yeah, no, I mean, Michigan looks really good. Penn State looks really good. Ohio State probably was the most vulnerable looking team just because Indiana gave them not a game, but at least, didn't let them hang 40 or 50. And, you used to look at that and say, okay, well, I don't know about their quarterback all of a sudden, but yeah, no, it's still the issue they have. But again, there are, as I've said before, like, you go in there, you're probably going to take 3 losses, but if you went 9-3 and you were Indiana, you'd be ecstatic. You'd be thrilled with that. And when they were really good, obviously they caught them on a bad year in 2020 where they had, they were able to get Penn State and Michigan. So there are benefits, and those are the Big Ten East teams are beatable. Those are games that you can win, and one of these days you got to win them. You can't complain about having to play Penn State when you can't beat Rutgers.
We've got lots more to come here on Indiana Sports Speed Radio. Dustin Dopirak sitting with us right now from the Indy Star. Make sure you're giving him a follow. Brought to you more, or we'll be back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
You're not going to the IU game by any chance, are you?
I am not. No. We usually would, but we're actually going up to South Bend. It's my it's MJ's aunt's 70th birthday, so we're going up to see her and hang out for a while.
70th birthday?
70th. Mm-hmm.
Congratulations.
So, yeah.
Congratulations. Yep. Does Notre Dame have a home game? Surely.
Yeah, they play Central Michigan.
Oh, they do? Okay, yeah.
Central Michigan? Is that what you said?
I'm pretty sure, unless I read it incorrectly.
Yeah. Oh, hey, I mean, they've got
to play somebody that's not great. I mean,
yeah, I mean, they've got tough enough schedule. I'm not cracking on them.
Yeah, they got Ohio State after that.
But Penn State and Michigan play after Penn State plays Indiana.
Is that right? Mm-hmm.
Penn State does play Ohio State though the week before.
Okay,
but that's at home, and I already liked Penn State, and now they're at home.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's see. Well, Penn State plays Illinois this week. Then they travel to Iowa. Then they got Northwestern. Then you slip in UMass. That could be a massacre.
Yeah.
Then Ohio State, 5 games from now, right before Indiana.
Yeah, I mean, they could lose that game. Iowa, not this week, but next week is going to be interesting. They get them at home, so that helps. But Iowa.
I love how Brian Ferentz has a thing in his contract where he has to score 25 points a game.
Exactly.
And so far, he's not on par with that.
What?
Iowa's offensive coordinator, aka
They put that in there.
Appearances. Yes.
Yeah.
He has. I don't know what.
Forgot about that.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure if they, win 10 games and he's not quite at it, he'll be fine. But who knows?
Right.
Not that they'll win 10, but they could.
That's you're really boring when they have to put in your contract that you have to score 2 touchdowns and
the Sickos committee on Twitter updates.
Yeah.
They have a Price is Right thing they do on Twitter where they do the mountain climber and it shows how much further. It's pretty funny.
Oh my God.
Sickos committee is up there for one of the best accounts. They've really, the last 2 years has been impressive work from the Sickos committee.
I've got to pull that up.
No, they're fun. They're entertaining.
I was not on the bandwagon.
Not aware of their work. Yeah.
It's pretty funny. All right, here we go, guys.
Series house plans. We have several lots available with scenic views of the golf course. Contact Amy Rhoda with Ravesco Real Estate for additional information. 812-583-0919 or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by Feast Market and Cellar. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Jim Coyle with you as always. Dustin Dopirak. Just looking at a response to something I posted on Twitter yesterday when I was trying to look up the Sickles committee. This is kind of funny. Sunday I saw the videos of all the recruits that were in Indiana this weekend. The guys from Montverde, Liam McNeely especially, and in one of it he has a Whataburger flag, and I'm like, oh my God, did he bring that with him, or was that the work of some quick thinker? Because there are people that love Whataburger, like myself, and if everyone that listens to this show knows I love Whataburger. So I just kind of put that out as a, something funny. And Adam Howard, who is a staffer at IU basketball, was the brainchild behind that. Very, very smart and quick thinker. But I got a reply from Phil Samuels that said, no need. Oh, no. Phil was defending me. I apologize. The response was from at Indy Sports AF, whatever the crap that is. Yeah, he totally brought that flag with him, Jim, idiot. The idea is he has plenty of NIL opportunities when he signs with IU, potentially bringing with him a Whataburger franchise to B-Town with his backing and endorsement. What don't you get?
I don't even.
Needless to remind you, there is not a Whataburger anywhere north of the Mason-Dixon line.
Nowhere close to it.
Not exactly, but that's okay. But I just find that's funny.
Yeah, but is it? I mean, it's Texas. It's a Texas franchise, right?
Well, it was, yes, but it was sold to a group that has plans to expand. I think there is one in outside of Nashville now. That's as close as there is. I don't know. Not a lot of other ones. I'd have to pull up a map, but it's mainly Oklahoma, Texas, and then they stayed down in that southeast portion in Florida even. When I went to the Gator Bowl in Jacksonville, was able to get it. But yeah, and actually I was thinking, boy, it'd be nice if he could bring a franchise here, but yeah, I'm sure that's not exactly what they meant, but appreciate that response. But
people get harsh on these Twitter streets, man. There's just everybody looking for a fight. They really look like everybody's just really angry about something.
Well, and Twitter has become Facebook, and that's what sucks. There's too many people. It's like, this is not Facebook, people.
It's getting there. It's getting there.
Yeah, it definitely has. Fred pointed out Cal Schwarber, 43 homers, man. He's second in the National League. Good shot at making the playoffs for the Phils. Another IU alum. man, I'm surprised they throw him the ball. Every time I see a home run, I'm like,
well, they don't always. He
still has 43 homers.
Yeah, but the wild part is, he's batting leadoff, he's hitting 190, and he has 43 home runs. So, and the thing is, like, he's like, there's the concept in, baseball that there's really three true outcomes. You either get on base, you hit a home run, or you get out. And so that's all that really matters. So what does it matter if you strike out or walk or whatever? Like, I think he's got more home runs than singles, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to check his stats real quick. I mean, I think he is, like, he's having a hard time, he's getting on base. He's got an absurd amount of strikeouts too. It's like, okay, like he can obviously take you out, but you can get an easy out there too if you can strike him out, because he's at 183 strikeouts after he struck out 200 times last year. So you're getting a strikeout per game out of him, but he's got an OBP of 347, even though he's hitting.
But that's what happens with. I mean, Dave Kingman was like the biggest strikeout guy, and he crushed the ball too.
Yeah,
and either striking out or going deep, baby.
It's weird to consider because, I mean, he was such a good all-around hitter at Indiana. I mean, a lot of this comes from the way the shift really worked against left-handers in particular. Because as tough as it was for right-handed hitters, you could, even if you've got three guys on that side, you got a chance of beating out an infield hit. When you're putting three guys on the left side of the field, from second base to first, it's really hard to, that's your pull side. And it's tough to get one out of there. And, you're not getting an infield hit when it's on the right side of the infield. So it became a lot more difficult. And I think he really changed the way he approached the game. And even though you banned shifts now, you can shade, you can't shift. He still kind of got into that way of being. But, like, remember, he was a really good hitter for average at Indiana. I mean, really good. I mean, he was 300 every time, and he just crushed line drives and stuff. He's really become a home run guy. But yeah, no, it is fascinating to watch. I mean, he's high strikeout. He can absolutely take an 0 for 4. But he's still got a really good eye for the ball and really patient, and we'll let pitches go and draw a bunch of walks. So it's like, if he's making contact, it's going out. But out of, he's looking at 260 some at bats. Well, no, I actually close to about 300 at bats this year. He has either struck out or walked. He has not made contact on 300 at bats. Maxine totally would love a Whataburger in Indiana, or anything else that leads to her getting food. Don't even worry about that. Anything else.
The last time I had Whataburger was actually last year when Indiana played Kansas.
Interesting.
Yes, Kansas City. They have them in Kansas City, and that particular one that I stopped in was owned or a franchisee of Patrick Mahomes.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, because that's a Texas guy moving up to Kansas City. That makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely, man. But yeah, I was that was in the back of my mind. I didn't say that, but I guess I should have, and I wouldn't have been such an idiot, quote unquote. But yeah. Let's see. We talked about Mel Tucker. How about Alabama, Texas? Man, Texas made a gigantic statement. They go into Tuscaloosa and come out with a big win. Now everybody's like, oh, is this the end of Alabama? Is it over? Which the ends come. They do come. And Alabama, even though what they've been doing would be considered incredible by most standards, most programs, they are slipping from their grasp of being the dominant team. I don't know that Georgia is either. I think they might be living on the SEC mantra, because Michigan might be a really, really good team this year. But it's hard to tell yet. Yeah.
So first off, like somebody tweeted at me, like, because I was just noting that Alabama looks vulnerable. And I said, but somebody said the SEC is dead. I'm like, I'm not going to believe that until I see the body. And metaphorically, obviously,
and kick it a couple times.
And kick it a couple times, and it doesn't get up and choke you. That's where I stand with this stuff. I mean, I think Alabama. The other thing too is like Alabama can have a year that's not great this year, and come back next year and cut up everybody. I'm not going to believe that Nick Saban's dynasty is over until it goes a couple years and he gets fired. Like, I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to fully buy into that until they become, consistently mediocre. And I don't know that Nick Saban allows that to happen. I think he's still got a lot left in the tank. But you can have a year or 2 years where you're vulnerable and where you catch some bad breaks or whatever. And I think they're there. I think the way I described it is I think Jalen Milroe is chaos agent of the college football season, because he has a remarkable physical abilities and is still trying to figure out how to play quarterback. So that leads to fun stuff because you went from just phenomenal just bomb that he hits in the end zone, and next drive's a pick six. Next drive after that it was like a 10-play 80-yarder or whatever. He's got legs, he's got an arm. He is still trying to figure out how to play quarterback, and so all things are possible. He's going to have games where he throws for 4 or 5 touchdowns. He's going to have games when he throws for 3 picks. And so when that's what your quarterback situation is, you go from having Bryce Young, who was one of the best players, like one of the best quarterbacks they've ever had all around. I mean, Young was phenomenal, and even last year when he doesn't win the Heisman, he was fantastic. Just in so many games. I mean, he kept them in so many games. He's a really, really good college football player. Milroe has a chance to be, but he is for the moment, he's got a cannon. It is a loose cannon for now, and so that is going to make them an entertaining watch, but I don't think they're going to be an 11-win team. I don't think this is it for them as far as losses is concerned. And I have a hard time imagining them beating a Georgia, but I mean, again, Georgia hasn't gotten beat by anybody yet, I'm not going to sit there and say that they're vulnerable until I see more evidence of that. And they could be, and I'm not going to say that maybe they go play Tennessee and they look rough. I don't know. For now, they look fine. For now, they've toasted the people they've beat up on the people they're supposed to beat up on. So we'll see what happens when they start playing some people. As you mentioned before on the show, they don't have the greatest schedule. It's going to be a while before they really get tested. But I'm not going to believe they're beatable until they get beat. And like I said, I think this year for Bama is going to be a bit of a downturn, but I'm going to have to see a few more years of Bama being shaky before I'm willing to say that Bama's done. Because there have been we've done this several times where they've gotten, they go 10-2 or whatever, and they got beat by Oklahoma in the Sugar Bowl, or they lose some other game they're not supposed to lose, and you're like, is this the end for Nick Saban? And next year they win a national championship. It's like, no, the answer is no. And so I'm not going to believe it until they're done. Now, this is one of the shakiest Alabama teams I've seen in a while. I would say just from watching them. I mean, Texas was clearly the better team, but I don't think that they, again, they're not going to be bad. Like they're not going to go 7-5. Like they're going to be 10-2, 9-3. 9-3, I think is a stretch. And again, they've got some cushion in that schedule too. I mean, I think Ole Miss is the best team they play. After that, Auburn, LSU, but you presume LSU gets off the mat after getting toasted by Florida State. That there's some better to LSU than you've seen, so maybe that's a game they lose. But I'm not going to believe Alabama and the Saban dynasty are done until I see a couple years of it's not going to be a couple years of 10-2. I'm going to claim it. It's got it like they got to be 8-4, 7-5 mediocre level before you start writing Saban's obituary, college football obituary.
My favorite rivalry game has become North Carolina App State.
Oh, that's fun. Oh yeah. No, those games are fun. That's
2
a huge
overtimes. Right there. App State took them to 2 overtimes in Chapel Hill before losing 40-34.
Yep, that was a fun game.
What's up next for you, man? You still chilling?
Still chilling. Got a couple more weeks. We'll start picking up the pre-work coming up this week. But yeah, chilling until camp. Obviously watched the end of FIBA World Cup, a tough way for the Americans to go out, but I thought Halliburton had a really good. Really, I thought he had a really good World Cup. Daniel Tice had a really good World Cup for Germany, and they obviously win the title. So he is making the Pacers' decisions difficult at backup center. So that I think is going to be a storyline to follow in camp between him and Isaiah Jackson and Jalen Smith playing behind Miles Turner. It's going to be interesting to see what the fight for minutes look like. If someone gets traded, if someone gets cut, there's the kind of next step, interesting storyline, I think, for the Pacers for what they do from a personnel standpoint. So
Tyrese looked really good, and it's really good for Tyrese to play in that. That event.
It was definitely.
Sucks for the Americans, but man, it's not. This is not your grandpa's international basketball anymore. It's these. Everybody
can play now. Yep.
Thoughts on Colorado, baby? They are real,
man. Deion's got it rolling. I mean, there's the whole length of stories about how much he should care about what media said about him or whatever, but he got it going, man. I mean, I think you knew he was going to get it going. It was just a question of when. And Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter are big time college football players, and those are a couple guys that can make it get going quick, and they have. And it's.
I mean, we're talking
going to be a remarkable story. Yeah,
Travis Hunter there's hands down he's going to win the Paul Hornung Award.
Sure. Yeah,
but
you can deliver that to him today.
Yeah, I mean he's already won it. There's no way that you don't put Shedeur Sanders up into the Heisman race. He's thrown for damn near 1,000 yards in 2 games.
Both of them are in it. Both. So obviously it's September, and so a lot of things. There is so much water to run under the bridge between now and the end.
Yeah, they've got a lot of tough teams yet to play. USC is going to be a different animal for them when that comes up on the schedule.
The last ride of the Pac-12 is going to be fun. It's a shame that it's coming to an end, but the last ride of the Pac-12 is going to be fun.
Yep, it's going to be exciting. Well, brother, I hope you and Maxine have a great and wonderful day and enjoy your sojourn to South Bend at the end of the week.
Will do. All right, y'all. Have a good one.
Dustin Dopirak from the Indy Star. Make sure you're giving him a follow. Then you can subscribe to his content because he is the best at what he does. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by Metalworks Brewing Company, a part of the Wow Food Group, served at all the Wow Food Group restaurants. Back right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Man, I can't wait till I have time to sit down and re-record those ins and outs. I recorded those whenever I wasn't sick at that point, but what moron?
Get that response from that idiot.
I mean, that's all true.
Or he called me an idiot.
Anyone who responds to anybody has nothing better to do. Responds to anybody in that manner has nothing better to do with their time.
I saw that and I'm like, oh my God.
Are any of the three expected to give commitments anytime soon?
Unless that's said to me, it would be just me pulling it out of my butt. I would be hard pressed to not think that Woody is pushing really hard for a commitment for a couple of reasons. Number one, he wants them badly, and with good reason. They're two of the best players available in the country, but they have zero commitments for 24. And I'll talk about this on the show. Actually, I need to talk about that.
Yep. And I've also got your Tom Allen clip that you requested.
Thank you.
So whenever you want to play that, it's ready to roll. I'll probably sit this segment out while I'm getting things ready for post show, but then the final segment I'll pop in with you. But I can still, if you call for the Tom Allen clip, I can still do it while I'm out of the stream. So don't be afraid to call for it if you want it. I'm glad you think they sound good, Justin, but I do think we
I think they sound fine too. But I
just hate how wimpy they sound. All right, anyway, here we go. Coming back.
Is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by Hank's Pizza Mac. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Well, welcome back here on this Monday. It's time to get the week started. Hope you had a great weekend. If you college football IU fan, you got to go Friday night, which was not great because there were two local games with North and South. North won that game, by the way, in overtime. And then Edgewood, I believe, beat Owen Valley. And I failed to bring this up. I'm so upset with myself when Don was on. Don's son is the coach at Edgewood. And I believe they've started the season 2-0, or no, they're in week 4, so I have to look at it. But I think he got a good win there. I'll have to pull up what he's done. Yeah. In the Big Ten, we never went through the Big Ten entirely. Michigan beat UNLV 35-7. Jack Tuttle got to play in that game for one play. One play, he comes in and runs the ball, and he gets shoved as he's going out of bounds. And UNLV had just a crap ton of equipment right there, and he ends up going into all of it. And he goes into the tent, but he comes back out and said, he's fine. He's wanted to play, but Mike Hart didn't want to put him back in. But Jack Tuttle is number 2 on the depth chart for Michigan. So he's looking at potentially winning a Big Ten and national championship ring. So good luck to him. The Buckeyes beat Youngstown State 35-7. So, they didn't exactly destroy them. They scored 28 of those points in the first half, leading 28-7 at the half, by the way. Penn State blisters Delaware 63-7. Man, Penn State is for real. 14 points in the first quarter, 21 in the second quarter, 21 in the third quarter, and then they back off with a touchdown in the final frame. Wisconsin goes to Washington State and gets knocked off 31-22. They've lost to the Cougars in back-to-back seasons, by the way. So an inauspicious start for Luke Fickell and his reign at Wisconsin. Nebraska. Dun, 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 dun. They went to Boulder, Colorado for the home opener of Neon Deion, Coach Prime, and his Colorado Buffaloes. It was a 36-14 to win, which you'd call that convincing, but I will say that game would have been closer. I don't think it would have been a 3-point game, but good God, their quarterback just killed anything that they tried to do. He had 2 fumbles. Another ball hit somebody when it was snapped. That was a fumble. He throws a pick. I think he has 6 turnovers in the first 2 games or something. Matt Rule's got to get he's got a good defense, but they've got to get things going. Purdue, they go down to Virginia Tech. I didn't get to watch the game. I tried to. I record all these games, but because this game was in a weather delay, it did not get recorded. I did not get to see it, so they win 24-17. They were expected to win that game, but anytime you go on the road and beat a Power 5 team, you're going to count that as an extra special. And you talk about extra special, the Hawkeyes, they go to Iowa State into Ames, Iowa, and they win the Cy-Hawk Trophy 2013. Boy, Jeffrey the Greek will be stoked this week. That's a big-time rivalry there. I bet I wonder, I should have bet on that game. No betting, pun intended. Michigan State Spartans. I guess that was Mel Tucker's final game as head coach. They won 45-14. Big win. We'll see how that carries on next week. Northwestern, they get their first win at home against UTEP. 38-7, scored 31 second half points. It was a 7-7 tie after the first quarter, 7-7 at the half, and then Northwestern scored 21 in the third and another 10 in the final frame. How about Charlotte? Charlotte's the team my brother used to be the head security for. They play everybody for paychecks. They went to Maryland. They only lose 38-20. And as a matter of fact, they were leading Maryland at the half 14-9. But the Terps would take care of business. Minnesota, they get a win at home against Eastern Michigan. It's 25-6. Rutgers gets a big win as well as they knock off Temple 36-7. So that's around the Big Ten. What happened? So, but Colorado, man, yep, I was all on them, no doubt. The top 25, Louisville, we knew that they already won their game 56-0 the previous night. They get 9 days. Indiana gets an extra day of rest. People were talking about. Louisville gets a day longer rest or rest a day more to practice. However you want to look at it. So it's going to be an interesting game. Indiana's defense is going to have to step up in that game, and Taven Jackson is going to probably have to withstand a little bit of pressure in that game. So Texas and Alabama.
Oh, fun fact about Louisville before you move away. One of the biggest complaints on the broadcast when they faced Murray State about Louisville was how, I don't want to say weak, but how vulnerable their defensive front seven was. So I don't know if pressure will be the problem. Maybe Louisville will put some pressure on Indiana, but
if they don't put pressure on Indiana, yes, if they don't put pressure on Indiana, and you're going to let Taven Jackson stand back there and throw the ball, and these weapons that they got some good receivers. Make no mistake, Indiana has guys that can catch the ball, that can make plays. You've got guys like Jalen Lucas that if they get the ball to him out in space, Josh Henderson, they threw some passes to him. That was a good thing. They got the running backs involved in the passing game, which they hadn't done in the week before. Very important. So
I think one thing a lot of people forget about too, like even though Indiana has struggled over the past 2 seasons, they still had their best recruiting class of all time less than a couple of years ago. Now, granted, a few of those guys are gone, like Dason McCullough and a few others, but a lot of those guys have stuck around because they had nowhere to go because Indiana wasn't any good. They couldn't just jump in the transfer portal and go wherever they want. So these guys who were highly touted out of high school, they've been around a little bit. They've been able to develop, and you're starting to see that recruiting class that was so hyped up kind of come together, and maybe that'll be to Indiana's benefit this season. We'll just have to see.
Absolutely. But I am looking forward to that game now. I will tell you that 10-point spread. I'm like, wow. And I get it. And part of it is because of them not, I wish their starting quarterback was a game deeper, whoever it is. I don't even care. Ed asking what's the injury on Cam Camper. All the press conferences is today. So, but I will tell you that Tom Allen has said now the Big Ten is required that teams do an availability report, mandatory a few hours prior to the game. We are not going to know anything other than that from now on. Now that they have basically an excuse not to do it, they're not going to do it. So there's that. Ben Davis lost, someone mentioned earlier, the score in the Ben Davis game that they took on IMG Academy. That's not a bad showing against them to me. IMG is just it's a warehouse, man. It's a sports warehouse. So that is, and Ben Davis is, I don't know that they're as strong this year as normally. Indian Creek Walker asking, what's everyone feel for the men's basketball recruiting weekend? Well, you had a bunch of guys in, that's for certain. Not only did you have a bunch of guys in, you had guys in it was very unique because you had 3 guys in that are high school teammates. I don't know if you can call them very high school, but they're high school teammates, all 3. One of them played with a current IU player and a former IU player who's in the NBA. Boy, that link is pretty solid. But there was a lot of chatter on Twitter, of course, and I know everyone pays attention to that. Liam McNeely sent out a tweet about being dialed in, and Derek Queen said even more dialed in. So that just set people off the rails, man. And that's fine, and that's good. They sure seem like they're in great shape to land Liam McNeely from all indications. But all of that is always, most of it is generally just how somebody feels along the way, and it gets said and repeated enough that people take that. But there is no reason to believe that that's not the case with Liam McNeely. He seems solid in, and I would imagine that the relationship with Malik Renew and Derek Queen, that is a gigantic selling point for Indiana. Jalen Hood-Schifino being part of it, reaching out, that's big. Romeo Langford didn't do that. He's not been really a part of, if you think about it, he's not been a part of Indiana basketball. I mean, since he went to the NBA, which I know you during the season and whatnot you're playing, but man, guys always they find a way at some point somehow to get to a, whether it's the Big Ten tournament or make a game, something. Nothing for him. And to see Jalen Hood-Schifino do that right now, that's him trying to be a part of the process. That's Mike Woodson trying to use that to his advantage, very smartly so, because that's what you do. Calipari did it for years. That's what you do. So I think that it was just a really good weekend for for the Indiana visit for the basketball. I saw him on the golf carts. I think I posted a video once. I forget. Brian Walsh was driving one of the carts. Jordan Halls was driving one of the golf carts. I don't know who was driving the other one. I saw Yasir Rosemont. I'm sure Adam Howard was on there. Calbert Cheney was on there. And, of course, the recruits visiting, Liam McNeely and Derek Queen, the 2 5-stars. Curtis Gibbons, 4-star guard. But it's a great visit for Indiana. But I would think that Mike Woodson really pushed for a commitment, or is pushing for a commitment from McNeely and Queen, partly because Indiana has no commitments for the 24 class. I mean, partly because they obviously want them. They're great players and they want to land them. But also what it does to recruiting, the carryover that has, what the bust the seal kind of thing that you think about. There is truth to that. It's momentum. People want to be a part of that stuff. Man, they're like, oh man, they're getting that in. I want to be a part of that. Indiana's NIL program has really helped. But looking forward to Indiana landing that first commitment. Both Derek Queen and, he's the top 7. He's number 7 in the country. Liam McNeely, top 10 also. So we'll see. We shall see. John Boy, also after the Indiana game, Tom Allen spoke. I asked him about how important it was to get that offense engaged in the versatile manner that he did, with getting the ball out in space to the running backs, to getting them involved in the passing game, the play calls, just the loosening up going into the Louisville game. And John, if you have that, let's hear it.
And the thing that for me, that's what I saw out of us. I think I might have said this in one of my, when I was talking this past week about, our offense got after our defense a fair amount during fall camp, and so it was back and forth without question. So I knew we had this opportunity to be able to, and I understand, we're, played a team that doesn't have the same level of talent. And so I understand that, but the execution was what I was encouraged by, and the reads and the amount of guys involved. And I think we have a deep team. I think we have a lot of receivers that can make plays, showed up tonight. We have a lot of running backs that make plays, show up tonight. I think we have a lot of guys, we have several different tight ends that we play that can help us and do different things. And so I feel like we got a couple quarterbacks that can play. And I think we played a lot of different linemen as well. We got 8 guys that I really believe that are ready to be in that 5 that we play with, and we can mix and match them, and things happen to guys. You can be able to rotate that. So I think it was what we needed to do, was to be able to be crisp and clean and sharp. And I think we punted a couple times, and just felt like that the execution was what we have to have, and we just got to build off of it. So obviously got a lot more work to do. Got a huge test and opportunity coming up here next weekend, but in order to be able to keep growing our offense, I thought tonight was important.
That's Tom Allen, Indiana head football coach, talking about getting the offense in gear before next week's game with Louisville in Indianapolis at Lucas Oil Stadium. And we'll be there. We'll also be right back with more here on Indiana Sports Beat, brought to you by the Ugly Grouper down on Anna Maria Island in Florida. Make sure you get by there. Back after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
All right.
I think Indiana stands a very good chance of getting both.
It wouldn't surprise me. I hope we can enjoy a year where Indiana's good in football and basketball. And again, Indiana doesn't have to be world beaters, but if they can win 7 games or something like that, and Indiana basketball can keep improving,
in football,
that'd be a heck of a year. I'm talking about both football and basketball.
Well, they ain't winning 7 games.
There are now, based on what's happening in the West, 9 winnable games on their schedule. Now, I'm not saying that. That's not me saying they're going to win 9, but there are 9 winnable games on that schedule.
There are definitely some 50-50 games.
You get Wisconsin at home, who just lost to Washington State. You get Michigan State at home, who is now dealing with a bunch of crap off the field. You get Purdue at home. No, is Purdue on the road? Purdue's on the road, but it's still a brand new first-year head coach. And then everything else in between. Illinois is taking a step back this year.
Yeah, but that's going to be
only teams on your schedule that should outright beat you, no matter what, is Penn State and Michigan. You already played Ohio State. Now, again, that's not me saying they're going to win 9, but there are 9 winnable opportunities total is the way that I see it. I think if they, I mean, obviously 6 is the minimum, but fuck 6. Excuse my language. We go higher than 6. All right, 30 seconds. Look at that. David Martin agrees with me. I appreciate you, David. Not that I'm looking for people to agree with me, but it's nice to know that some people do. Here we go.
As many rounds as you like for just $299. That's better than a birdie. But you don't have to be a student to play at Eagle Point. Go online to set your tee time or call 812-824-4040. The Golf Club at Eagle Point in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville and Evansville. Pizza, burgers, beer. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Jim Coyle with you as always here on this Monday. Hope you're having a great start to the week. Good weekend. 9/11, by the way. I apologize for failing to mention that. Salute to all of our first responders.
The 22nd anniversary of the attack on the Twin Towers.
Shout out to all of our first responders. Thank you for everything you do. We greatly appreciate you. Indiana had maybe one of the biggest, it's hard to say. I'd have to think back, but this was a gigantic weekend of visiting for the Indiana basketball program with Liam McNeely and Derek Queen alone. And they had Curtis Gibbons along with them, another Montverde teammate who was a 4-star guard. But Liam McNeely and Derek Queen are the 2 prizes. Different players. McNeely is, I think he's actually 6'7", but 6'7" wing that can guard 1, 2, 3, or 4. He is one of the most versatile players. Could shoot the ball. He's a good player. Derek Queen, he's a big baby. And when I say a big, he's a big. He's 6'10". I think he's 240. He's got some beef on him. He gets to college. They'll turn him into a monster. I think Indiana is just in really, really great shape for Liam McNeely and Derek Queen both. You normally don't get that. And for me to say that I think that they stand a great chance of getting both, that's going out on a limb, because a lot of guys most of the time want to do their own thing, make their own way. But these are two different players that play different positions. They've played together. They enjoy playing together. They knew each other before Liam McNeely came to Montverde Academy. So their friendship was already established. And I can only imagine that a joint trip like they took this weekend to Indiana, in which not only are they doing that together and experiencing that together, but you add in Derek Queen's former teammate, Malik Renew, who's currently on the Indiana roster, and that only just makes it bigger. Now, until somebody commits, doesn't really mean jack. I think Indiana is in the best position than anybody to land Liam McNeely. So in essence, unless something changes, I expect Indiana to land Liam McNeely. When does he commit? I don't know. He doesn't need, with Indiana, he doesn't need to wait as far as, NIL stuff. He knows what's what. Now, does he want to take other visits and listen to a few other things before he makes his decision? Very possible. Because things have changed. The NIL, everybody has a package now. Hey, here's what we have. Here's what we can offer you. So it's not just the basketball portion. So it's a lot more important to listen to these proposals for these guys. And I understand that. It's just bad business not to. But he may make up his mind sooner rather than later. Some guys would rather get it out of the way before their season starts, so they can not have that hanging over them. We'll see how these guys go. And if Liam McNeely commits, does that start a little chain? That would, Indiana getting both of those guys would be gigantic. And there would be others that wanted to play with them, without question. And you're going to have openings on this roster next year that you don't know about yet. I'm not talking about the seniors that are leaving. The seniors are always leaving. You always know who's leaving in that regard. But now you don't know who else is leaving, because there will always, and I mean always, there's always going to be someone who just isn't happy and thinks they can find an opportunity elsewhere. And with the immediate eligibility transfer portal, there's just no way someone's not going to be in that. You have the cases like Mackenzie Abaco. Does he end up being a one and done? Khalil Ware. Does he come out and perform remarkably and become a one and done? It's not expected, but you don't know that. Jalen Hood-Schifino wasn't expected to be a one and done. It was possible, and it happened. So, but I think the weekend was a great one for Indiana. They were riding around and looked like they were having a great time. I think Indiana has really elevated their recruiting, and they have a really, really good staff. I mean, you've Mike Woodson has put together a good staff. You've got Jordan Halls on this thing. You've got Calbert Cheney with these guys. In addition to his assistant coaches, Brian Walsh doing a fantastic job. Yasir Roseman out there killing it. They have a staff that these kids like and relate to. And respect. Calbert Cheney's the all-time leading scorer in the Big Ten and played over a dozen years in the NBA. I don't even need to talk about the NBA experience on the coaching staff. Indiana has a ton to offer these guys, and that doesn't even include the money aspect. That it's there. You have to talk about. It is there. I don't know if it's always the most money, unless it's a substantially different amount for players when they make a decision. Because I would imagine that, if there was someone offering, say, Liam McNeely the same or a little more, I don't think he would. I think he still goes to Indiana. I think that they have recruited him well, better than anyone else, and shown that they want him. And I think that will be rewarded. And I think it will be rewarded in duplicate, as they've done the same to Derek Queen. They've been following, recruiting him for probably 3 years now. I mean, he's been at Montverde since Jalen Hood-Schifino was there. I remember talking to him when I was down at Montverde for their invitational tournament, Jalen's senior season. I may have to go back to that this year, as a matter of fact, with both of those guys. Probably will have to plan on doing just that. Andy says he's a Texas kid. In his opinion, he's going to give the home state school one last visit. He believes it's scheduled in a couple of weeks. I do believe that is the truth as well. And don't think that Texas is not going to roll out the red carpet. Don't think that they don't have money. Holy moly. Texas has got money. Big money. You don't forget everybody on their starting offensive line. This was last year. Received $50,000. But that's the world we live in. It does. Money is a gigantic part of it now. Unfortunately, but that's the case. That's why I'll tell you right now. That has to be why who am I trying to think? Daggone it. Flory Badunga from Kokomo was all but signed, sealed, and delivered to Duke. Grew up loving Duke, wanting to go to Duke. It was just over once they made the offer to everybody. Then he goes to Kansas and oops. Kansas has money, people. Kansas has money. Don't forget, your boy from Michigan was making six figures, like $100,000 at Michigan. He goes down to Kansas, that goes to seven figures. Indiana has not paid anybody. Seven figures in one. From that, maybe in totality they have, but That was after, I would say, anyone from Indiana that has eclipsed that mark, like Trace Jackson Davis, is with a total of multiple things. Indiana's NIL cooperative, and then outside NIL opportunities as well. But those come after the fact. They're not all put together before they get here.
1 minute.
Man, it has been an incredible day. Expecting to do it again tomorrow. Today is the Indiana football press conference. Not sure if we'll find out the starting quarterback or not. Of course, that will be the first question asked. We'll get an update on we probably won't get any update on injuries. Like I said, Indiana's going to be holding that now with the new Big Ten rule. But a big thanks to Don Fischer, the golden voice of the Hoosiers, Dustin Dopirak from the Indy Star. Tomorrow on the program, Mike DeCourcy, Chronic Hoosier, and Mike Nislek from the Bloomington Herald-Times. Until tomorrow, thanks to John for keeping us between the white lines. Most importantly, thanks to you guys. Without you, we have no reason to be here. Appreciate you so much. We're back tomorrow to do this again. Until then, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.